The scream came before the footsteps. Not the scream of a warrior, the terrified cry of a mother. By sunset, the royal assassins would reach the border village, and if they found the child first, the last chance to preserve the alpha bloodline would disappear forever. Before this story changes everything you thought you knew about Destiny, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us where you are listening from. Now, return with us to the day a little girl unknowingly stopped a kingdom from destroying its own future. The border village of Ash Hollow had never welcomed a king. Its crooked cottages leaned against the mountain winds, and its people survived more by hope than prosperity. Alpha King Adrian Ravencrest rode through the muddy streets surrounded by a small escort, inspecting the neglected settlements that had long been ignored by the royal council. Children peeked from behind wooden fences. Farmers lowered their heads respectfully. No one dared approach. Then it happened. A tiny blur of brown curls burst from a nearby herb garden. A little girl, no older than 4, sprinted toward the towering Alpha King with fearless determination. Before anyone could stop her, she wrapped both arms around Adrian's leg. "Daddy!" The single innocent word shattered the silence. Every villager froze. Royal guards instinctively reached for their swords. Adrian stared down in complete disbelief. The little girl smiled as though she had finally found someone she had been searching for her entire life. "I knew you would come," she whispered happily. Her bright amber gold eyes looked exactly like his. For one impossible heartbeat, the world stopped turning. The little girl did not realize she had changed the course of an entire kingdom. She simply laughed as one of the royal guards gently lifted her away from the stunned Alpha King. "Lyra," an elderly woman whispered urgently. "Come here, child." "But I found Daddy." The villagers exchanged frightened glances. No one corrected her. No one explained. Instead, an uneasy silence settled over the square. Adrian slowly knelt until he was eye level with the little girl. "What is your name?" She smiled proudly. "My name is Lyra." "And who told you I was your father?" The child tilted her head. "No one." "I dreamed about you." She pointed directly at his chest. "The big wolf said I would know you when your eyes looked like sunshine." A strange chill ran through Adrian. Before he could ask another question, a young village healer pushed through the gathering crowd, carrying a basket of freshly gathered herbs. Her steps stopped instantly. The basket slipped from her hands. Bundles of lavender, mountain sage, and silverleaf scattered across the dirt road. For several long seconds, neither of them breathed. "Elara," his voice barely escaped as a whisper. She looked different from the young woman he remembered. Years of hard work had left faint calluses on her hands. Simple linen clothing had replaced the elegant dresses she once wore. A few silver threads now shimmered among her chestnut hair whenever the sunlight touched it. Yet her gentle blue-gray eyes remained exactly the same. They were still the eyes that had haunted Adrian's dreams for years. Lyra looked back and forth between them with complete innocence. "Mommy!" She ran to Elara and hugged her waist. "I found Daddy." Elara gently stroked her daughter's hair without taking her eyes off Adrian. "I know, sweetheart." Her voice was calm. Too calm. Almost as though she had spent years preparing herself for this impossible meeting, the villagers quietly returned to their work, pretending not to watch. In truth, every eye remained fixed on the old healer's cottage. That was where Elara invited Adrian after politely asking his escort to remain outside. The cottage reflected the life she had built from almost nothing. Bundles of drying herbs hung from the wooden beams. Glass bottles filled with homemade medicine lined rough shelves. A small stone fireplace warmed the single-room home. Everything inside was worn. Everything was spotless. There was no luxury, only quiet dignity. Lyra happily sat at a small table drawing wolves on scraps of paper while Elara prepared tea. Neither adult knew how to begin. Finally, Adrian spoke. "I searched for you." She continued pouring hot water into 2 clay cups. "For how long?" The question landed harder than any accusation. He lowered his eyes. "Not long enough." A faint, bittersweet smile crossed her face. No. It was not. Years earlier, on the day Adrian chose peace over destiny, Elara had quietly left the capital before sunrise. She carried no title, no fortune, no promise that tomorrow would be kinder than yesterday. Only the tiny heartbeat growing beneath her own. She never wrote to Adrian, never demanded recognition, never begged for protection. Instead, she disappeared beyond the northern mountains. Ash Hollow became the first village willing to accept a wandering healer with no family name. The work was endless. Broken bones, winter fevers, childbirth, long nights beside dying patients. Many days she accepted vegetables, bread, or firewood instead of coins because the villagers themselves had almost nothing. Some nights, she quietly skipped dinner so Lyra would never have to. The little girl never noticed. Whenever Lyra asked why they had so little compared to other families, Elara always smiled. "We already have everything that matters. Love, safety, hope. Those gifts could not be purchased. Yet life near the border carried its own dangers. Traveling merchants occasionally spoke about the Alpha King. His victories, his political marriage, his growing influence across the rival packs. Each story brought a brief shadow across Elara's face. Then she returned to treating patients as though nothing had happened. She refused to fill Lyra's childhood with bitterness. The little girl knew only one thing. Her father was brave. Her father protected people. Her father would come one day. Elara had never taught her those words. Somehow, Lyra had always believed them. As the afternoon sunlight faded, Adrian watched Lyra chase butterflies outside the cottage window. She laughed with effortless joy. Then something extraordinary happened. A frightened hunting dog suddenly broke free from its leash and charged toward a younger child. Before anyone could react, Lyra instinctively stepped forward. "No!" The single word echoed with surprising authority. A warm golden pulse spread outward from her tiny body. The charging dog stopped instantly. Its ears flattened, its tail lowered. Instead of attacking, it quietly lay on the ground, whimpering in complete submission. The entire village fell silent. Even the royal guards exchanged stunned looks. Only wolves born from the direct alpha bloodline could unconsciously project dominance like that. Especially at 4 years old. Adrian felt his heartbeat thunder inside his chest. He slowly turned toward Elara. She had already closed her eyes. She knew this moment would come someday. "I tried to hide it," she admitted softly. "But every year it became stronger." Adrian's voice barely remained steady. "She carries the royal alpha aura." "Yes. And she is." Elara finally met his eyes. "Our daughter." Outside, Lyra giggled as the frightened dog rolled onto its back, asking for belly rubs instead of causing harm. She had no idea that her innocent act had revealed the greatest secret in the kingdom. Nor did she know that far beyond the mountains, hidden riders already galloped toward Ash Hollow, carrying sealed orders from the Royal Council. Orders that contained only one chilling command: find the child. Before the king learns the truth. Adrian could not speak. The words "our daughter" echoed through his mind with greater force than any battle cry he had ever heard. He had faced rogue alphas. He had negotiated peace between ancient rival packs. He had stood before thousands without fear. Yet nothing in his life had prepared him for a 4-year-old girl with his eyes, or the woman he had unknowingly abandoned standing only a few feet away. Outside the cottage, Lyra laughed as butterflies danced around the tiny herb garden. Inside, silence became almost unbearable. Adrian finally found his voice. "You should have told me." Elara looked toward the window where Lyra was picking wildflowers. "Would you have believed me?" The question lingered between them. He remembered that terrible day years ago. The Royal Council had surrounded him with warnings. A true king sacrifices personal happiness. A political marriage is the only path to peace. A rejected mate bond will eventually fade. He had convinced himself that destiny could be ignored. That duty demanded sacrifice. Now he understood the true cost. "No," Adrian admitted quietly. "I probably would not have." Elara nodded. "That is why I left. I refused to let our daughter become another political argument." A cool mountain breeze drifted through the open doorway. It carried the fragrance of pine forests after rain. Wild lavender, fresh herbs, moonflowers blooming beneath the evening sky. Then, Adrian caught another scent, one he had not experienced for years, one his soul had never truly forgotten. Elara. The effect was immediate. A violent surge of electricity shot through every nerve in his body. His heartbeat doubled. Warmth exploded across his chest. Deep inside, the ancient alpha wolf that had slept beneath years of discipline suddenly awakened. "Mine." The primal voice thundered through his soul. Not as a thought, as absolute truth. A deep, instinctive purr vibrated inside his chest. Low, powerful, uncontrollable. His wolf recognized its mate long before his mind could accept it. The mate bond had never disappeared. It had merely waited. Patiently, only, for him to return. Across the room, Elara staggered backward. She gripped the edge of the wooden table as a familiar current raced through her own body. The forgotten warmth returned with breathtaking intensity. Every heartbeat synchronized with Adrian's. Every breath suddenly felt shared. Her wolf lifted its head after years of quiet loneliness. The invisible thread connecting their souls tightened until it became impossible to deny. Tears gathered in her eyes. "I told myself it was over," she whispered. "So did I." Neither of them moved. Neither dared break the fragile moment unfolding between them. Outside, the evening wind carried the unmistakable scent of mates reunited after years apart. Several elderly wolves working nearby paused without understanding why emotions suddenly filled the air. Ancient instincts recognized what human eyes could not. Destiny had found its way home. Little Lyra burst through the doorway, holding a crooked bouquet of wildflowers. "Mommy!" She stopped. Her bright eyes moved from Adrian to Elara, then back again. A wide smile spread across her face. "You both smell happy now." Neither adult could answer. The child walked directly toward Adrian and placed the flowers into his hands. "I picked these for you." He accepted them with trembling fingers. "No one ever gave me flowers before." Lyra frowned. "Really? Not even Mommy?" Elara blushed softly. "No, sweetheart. I never had the chance." The little girl sighed dramatically. "Adults make everything so complicated." Adrian laughed. It was the first genuine laugh he had experienced in years. For a brief moment, the burden of the crown disappeared. He was simply a father holding flowers given by his daughter. As night settled over Ash Hollow, Adrian ordered his royal guards to establish a protective perimeter around the village. Captain Rowan approached quietly. "Your Majesty, the scouts have returned." "What did they find?" "Tracks. Many. Not villagers. Mounted riders. Heading this direction." "How many?" "At least 40. Adrian's expression hardened immediately. "They are moving faster than expected." Captain Rowan lowered his voice. "Our scouts also discovered something else." He handed Adrian a broken arrow wrapped in black cloth. The king's eyes narrowed. He recognized the design instantly. The black raven insignia burned into the shaft belonged to the Shadow Fang, an elite assassination unit. Officially, it no longer existed. Unofficially, only the Royal Council had access to its surviving members. "They know," Adrian said quietly. Captain Rowan nodded. "They know about the child." Inside the cottage, Elara carefully tucked Lyra into bed. The little girl hugged her favorite stuffed wolf before closing her eyes. "Will Daddy still be here tomorrow?" Elara smiled gently. "I hope so. I dreamed he would stay." Within moments, Lyra had fallen asleep. Peacefully. Completely unaware that trained assassins were already riding through the mountain passes toward her home. Later that night, Adrian stood alone outside beneath a sky filled with brilliant stars. He replayed every decision that had led him here. The political marriage, the years of silence, the lonely life Elara had endured, the childhood his daughter had lived without ever knowing her father. Regret settled heavily upon him. Not because fate had punished him, because he had punished the people he loved without realizing it. Soft footsteps approached behind him. Elara joined him beneath the moonlight. Neither spoke for several moments. Finally, Adrian turned toward her. "I cannot change the past. No, you cannot. But I will protect both of you." She searched his face carefully. Not because you feel guilty? He shook his head. Because you are my family. Before Elara could respond, a deafening wolf howl shattered the stillness of the night. Then another, and another. Captain Rowan sprinted across the village square. Your Majesty! They are here! Torches suddenly appeared along the dark mountain ridge. Dozens of them, then dozens more. An army of mounted assassins emerged from the forest, like shadows pouring down the mountainside. Their black banners snapped violently in the wind. Every rider carried the same order. Capture the child. Kill anyone who stood in the way. Adrian slowly drew his sword. Golden light ignited within his eyes. His alpha wolf rose completely awake. This time, he would not fail his mate. He would not abandon his daughter. Not again. The first arrow struck before anyone could breathe. It screamed through the night and buried itself in the wooden fence just inches from Lyra's bedroom window. Then another, and another. Within seconds, hundreds of black-feathered arrows rained over Ash Hollow. Children cried. Villagers scattered. Windows shattered. The peaceful mountain village erupted into chaos. "Protect the healer!" Captain Rowan roared. Royal guards immediately formed a defensive circle around Elara's cottage. Steel clashed against steel as the first wave of Shadowfang assassins crashed into the village. They moved with terrifying precision. Silent, merciless, professional. These were not soldiers sent to occupy. They had come to erase a bloodline. Inside the cottage, Elara scooped Lyra into her arms. The little girl had awakened, but did not cry. Instead, she wrapped her small arms around her mother's neck. "Are the bad wolves here?" Elara forced herself to smile. "Stay behind me, no matter what happens." Lyra nodded. She trusted her mother completely. Outside. Alpha King Adrian walked alone into the center of the village square. His black royal cloak billowed behind him in the mountain wind. Dozens of assassins surrounded him. Crossbows aimed directly at his heart. One rider slowly removed his hood. Grand Counselor Magnus Thorn, his silver hair gleamed beneath the moonlight. So, the king finally discovered his daughter. Adrian answered with chilling calm. "You ordered this." Magnus smiled without remorse. "I ordered what should have happened years ago." He raised one gloved hand. "The child carries the last uncontrollable alpha bloodline. If she lives, the council loses its throne." Adrian's voice became almost impossibly quiet. "She is 4 years old." "Exactly." Magnus pointed toward the cottage. "Bring me the girl." No assassin moved. Every warrior kept watching Adrian. Something about the king's stillness unsettled them. Magnus frowned. "I gave you an order." One assassin reluctantly stepped forward, then another, then 10 more. They advanced together slowly, carefully. Adrian never reached for his sword. He simply closed his eyes. For years, he had restrained the oldest alpha blood within him, for diplomacy, for peace, for politics. Tonight, none of those chains mattered. His daughter was behind him. His mate was behind him. That was all the reason the ancient wolf needed. His eyes opened. They burned like molten gold. The alpha aura exploded. No warning, no gradual release, just overwhelming force. The earth trembled. Every lantern in the village extinguished simultaneously. Roof tiles slid from houses. Mountain birds burst into the night sky in frightened waves. The pressure struck the assassins like a collapsing mountain. One dropped to both knees. Another screamed as his sword slipped from numb fingers. Then another. And another. Within seconds, more than 50 elite killers lay pinned against the ground by an invisible weight. Their wolves refused to obey them. They recognized something older, something absolute. The first alpha. Adrian finally spoke. One word. Kneel. The command rolled across the battlefield like thunder. Every assassin still standing collapsed instantly. Weapons crashed onto the frozen ground. Several horses lowered themselves as well, trembling beneath the impossible dominance. Only Magnus remained standing. His enchanted council staff glowed crimson. So, you still possess that strength. Adrian slowly walked toward him. Every footstep cracked the stone beneath his boots. I spent years pretending power alone could build peace. He stopped only a few feet away. I was wrong. Magnus slammed the staff into the earth. Blood-red energy erupted outward. Ancient runes circled the battlefield. Dark chains of enchanted iron burst from beneath the frozen soil. They wrapped around Adrian's arms, his legs, his chest. The counselor laughed. You cannot defeat the council's relic. It was forged to imprison Alpha Kings. The chains tightened. For one brief heartbeat, the village believed the king had fallen. Inside the cottage, Lyra suddenly looked toward the window. Her golden eyes began glowing. No. Elara turned in alarm. Lyra? They are hurting Daddy. The little girl's voice changed. It carried an echo far older than childhood. Before Elara could stop her, Lyra stepped outside. Barefoot. Tiny. Completely unafraid. The battlefield froze. Even Magnus stared in disbelief. The child walked directly toward Adrian. Every assassin instinctively moved aside, not because they chose to, because something compelled them. Magnus recovered first. Kill her! 3 assassins broke free from the alpha pressure and charged. They never reached the little girl. Lyra raised one tiny hand. I said, no. Golden light burst outward. Not violent, not destructive. Pure, ancient. The 3 assassins stopped instantly. Their weapons dissolved into silver dust. The enchanted chains binding Adrian shattered into thousands of glowing fragments. A brilliant alpha aura spread across the valley. Every wolf, villager, guard, even the assassins, felt the same impossible truth. The child carried the original royal bloodline. Silence lasted only a heartbeat. Magnus roared in fury and drew a hidden obsidian blade. If I cannot control the heir, I will erase her. He lunged toward Lyra. Adrian moved. No eye could follow him. One moment he stood 20 feet away, the next, he was between Magnus and his daughter. The obsidian blade shattered against Adrian's sword. The impact echoed through the mountains. Magnus attacked again. Wild, desperate. Adrian blocked every strike effortlessly. Then, With a single sweeping motion, he disarmed the counselor. The black blade spun through the air before embedding itself harmlessly into an ancient oak tree. Magnus fell backward. For the first time in decades, fear filled his eyes. Royal guards immediately surrounded the defeated council leader. Captain Rowan placed enchanted restraints around his wrists. "It is over." Magnus glared at Adrian. "You think this changes destiny?" Adrian looked toward Elara, then toward Lyra. "No, it restores it." Around them, surviving assassins slowly surrendered. One after another, swords struck the ground. No one wished to fight any longer, not after witnessing a child whose very existence commanded the ancient wolves. High above the battlefield, the full moon emerged from behind the clouds. Its silver light washed over Adrian, Elara, and Lyra as they stood together for the first time. Not as strangers, not as broken souls separated by politics, but as the family fate had refused to abandon. Morning light revealed what the darkness had tried to hide. Ash Hollow still stood. Several cottages had been damaged. Fences lay broken. The village square bore the scars of battle, yet not a single child had been taken. Not a single innocent life had been lost. For the first time in years, the villagers looked toward the royal guard with gratitude instead of fear. The kingdom's true enemy had never been beyond its borders. It had been seated inside its own council. Grand Councillor Magnus Thorne stood in chains before the royal tribunal. His crimson ceremonial robes had been stripped away. Only plain gray prison garments remained. Beside him knelt Lady Seraphine Valamont, the noble Luna who had once accepted the political marriage arranged by the council. The great hall overflowed with nobles, military commanders, village elders, and representatives from every major pack. No whispers filled the chamber. Only silence. High Judge Aldrich slowly unrolled a collection of ancient documents recovered from the royal archives. "For 12 years," he declared, "the royal council concealed the existence of the king's true mate." He placed another document beside it. They ordered surveillance of Elara Ashwood. Another. They authorized repeated attempts to locate and eliminate the royal child. The courtroom grew colder with every sentence. Magnus finally lifted his head. "I did what was necessary." "Necessary?" Adrian asked quietly. Magnus met his gaze without shame. "A kingdom cannot survive if destiny is allowed to rule. It survives because men like me make impossible decisions." Adrian answered calmly. "No. It survives because ordinary people continue choosing compassion after powerful men choose fear." Lady Seraphine slowly stood. Tears filled her eyes. "I knew the council wanted the throne." She lowered her head. "But I never knew they intended to murder a child." Her voice broke. "I accepted the crown because I believed peace required sacrifice." She looked toward Elara. "I did not realize the sacrifice would become your life." Elara remained silent. There was pain in her heart, but there was no hatred. The High Judge raised the ceremonial staff. "The verdict of the Royal Tribunal is unanimous. Grand Councillor Magnus Thorne is permanently stripped of every title, estate, military privilege, and political authority. He shall spend the remainder of his life imprisoned beneath Iron Hollow Fortress, where no influence shall ever threaten another innocent soul. The staff struck the marble floor. Lady Seraphine Valamont is removed from succession and permanently exiled from royal office. Her remaining years shall be devoted to healing villages devastated by the council's corruption. Neither sentence ended in execution. Justice had prevailed without vengeance. That was the kingdom Adrian wanted to build. As the court emptied, only Adrian, Elara, and little Lyra remained inside the great hall. The enormous chamber suddenly felt strangely quiet. Golden afternoon light streamed through stained glass windows, painting the marble floor with shifting colors. Lyra wandered toward the towering throne. "Is this where Daddy works?" Adrian smiled softly. "Sometimes." She frowned. "It looks lonely." The simple observation pierced his heart. It was. He looked toward Elara. "Until today." Adrian slowly removed his royal cloak, then his ceremonial sword. Finally, he lifted the heavy alpha crown from his head and placed it gently on the lowest step before the throne. Every remaining royal guard instinctively turned away, recognizing the deeply personal moment unfolding before them. Adrian walked toward Elara. His armor still carried scratches from the previous night's battle. Dried blood stained one shoulder where an assassin's blade had barely missed his heart. Without hesitation, the Alpha King dropped to both knees. The sound of steel meeting marble echoed through the silent hall. Lyra's eyes widened. "Daddy?" Adrian never looked away from Elara. "When the council demanded that I reject the mate bond, I believed I was saving the kingdom." He swallowed heavily. "I never realized I was destroying my own family." Emotion tightened his voice. "I was absent for every birthday, every first step, every nightmare, every laugh." He glanced toward Lyra. "I cannot reclaim those years." He looked back at Elara. "And I will never ask you to pretend they did not happen." His eyes shimmered with restrained tears. "I only ask for the chance to spend the rest of my life earning what I should have protected from the beginning." Silence filled the hall. Not uncomfortable. Sacred. Elara slowly approached him. She saw not the Alpha King, not the ruler of the greatest werewolf kingdom. She saw the young man who had once loved her before fear and duty separated them. Carefully, she reached out her hand, not to forgive everything in a single moment, but to acknowledge the sincerity before her. Adrian accepted her hand with trembling fingers. "I cannot promise that every wound has healed," Elara whispered. "They have not." A faint smile appeared. "But healing has always been my gift." She gently helped him rise. "And perhaps it can become ours." Before either could say another word, Lyra threw herself between them. She wrapped one arm around her mother, the other around her father. "There." She grinned proudly. "Now nobody can go away again." Both adults laughed through tears. Adrian lifted his daughter into his arms for the first time. She rested her head against his shoulder, as though it had always belonged there. The empty years could never be erased, but they no longer had to define tomorrow. Above them, the great moon crystal glowed with quiet silver light, not celebrating victory over enemies, celebrating something infinitely rarer. A broken family choosing to become whole again. The kingdom gathered beneath the full moon. From the highest nobles to the poorest villagers of Ash Hollow, thousands stood shoulder to shoulder in the royal moon courtyard. There were no velvet ropes, no separate platforms, no walls dividing common wolves from royal blood. At Adrian's command, every gate of the palace had been opened. "The throne exists to serve the people," he declared. Not the other way around. For the first time in generations, the crowd answered not with fearful silence, but with joyful applause. At the center of the courtyard stood a crystal pedestal. Resting upon it was the ancient Alpha crown. Its silver gemstones shimmered beneath the moonlight, as though they possessed a heartbeat of their own. High Elder Orion stepped forward. "For many years," he proclaimed, "our kingdom believed strength alone created worthy rulers." He slowly turned toward Elara. "But true greatness is measured by compassion. You carried life when others demanded sacrifice. You protected hope when others chose fear. You raised the future queen without bitterness." He bowed deeply. "Elara Ashwood, rightful Luna of Raven Dominion, will you accept your place beside the Alpha King?" Elara looked across the sea of faces. She saw villagers who had once offered her bread when she had nothing. She saw royal guards who now stood beside ordinary farmers as equals. Finally, her eyes rested upon Adrian. "I accept," she said softly, "not because of destiny alone, but because every child deserves to grow up in a kingdom where kindness is never mistaken for weakness." The High Elder gently placed the Alpha crown upon her head. The instant it touched her hair, a pillar of brilliant silver light burst into the heavens. The moon crystal above the palace answered with radiant light. Across every territory of Raven Dominion, wolves lifted their heads toward the night sky. The mate bond was complete. The kingdom had its true Luna. Adrian stepped beside her. He did not take her hand immediately. Instead, he looked toward the smallest member of their family. Lyra. The little girl hurried across the marble floor. He knelt before her. "There is one more promise I must make." She tilted her head curiously. "You will never again wonder whether your father is coming home." "I am home." Tears filled Elara's eyes. Adrian gently lifted Lyra into his arms. The little girl laughed as tiny sparks of golden alpha aura shimmered around her. The gathered crowd smiled. No one feared her power anymore. They celebrated it. High Elder Orion raised an ancient scroll bearing the royal seal. "By unanimous decree, Lyra Ashwood Ravencrest is hereby recognized as the legitimate princess of Raven Dominion and heir to the Alpha throne." Thunderous applause echoed across the palace. Lyra blinked. "Does this mean I still get to pick flowers with Mommy?" Laughter spread through the crowd. Adrian smiled. "It means you can be a princess who picks as many flowers as she wants." As the celebration continued, lanterns illuminated the capital like countless stars. Music drifted through the warm evening air. Families embraced. Children laughed. Hope had replaced fear. Adrian stood beside Elara on the palace balcony overlooking the kingdom they would now lead together. Years earlier, he had believed peace required abandoning love. Now he understood the opposite. Only love had made lasting peace possible. Before this story comes to an end, we would love to hear your thoughts. If you were Elara, could you truly forgive the man who rejected destiny to protect his kingdom? Or would some wounds remain too deep to heal? Share your answer in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more unforgettable werewolf romance adventures filled with alpha kings, fated mates, hidden heirs, and epic journeys of love, redemption, and destiny. Until next time, may courage always guide your heart when destiny comes calling.